Hey everyone. We all love to catch up on what's going on with Wendy Williams, but this deep dive is going to be a little different. This one isn't about, her usual talk show drama. This time it's serious stuff. We're talking about like health challenges and legal battles based on some new developments. There's a people.com article from November 26, 2024. It's titled Wendy Williams Deemed Permanently Incapacitated from Dementia, Guardian.
Yeah, this article really it paints a pretty concerning picture of where things are at with Wendy. I mean, it's been public knowledge that she was diagnosed with early onset dementia. That was back in 2023. But her court-appointed guardian is saying that it's progressed, quite a bit. They're using terms like cognitively impaired and even permanently disabled.
Wow, permanently disabled.
Hmm. That sounds really serious. I mean, I've heard of dementia. But what makes this early onset version different? I mean, does it affect people differently?
Sadly, yes. With early onset FTD, that's what Wendy has. The symptoms often show up before age 65, and they tend to get worse a lot faster. I mean, just think about the impact on someone like Wendy. She's always been so quick-witted and full of life. It's just a really tough situation for someone in their prime.
It's just heartbreaking to hear. And then on top of everything, she's dealing with this legal fight over that Where is Wendy Williams documentary. Can you remind us what that's all about?
Sure. So her guardian is actually suing the production companies that made the documentary. They're saying it was filmed and released without her consent. It's tricky because the argument is that because of her dementia, Wendy wouldn't have been able to fully understand what she was agreeing to.
That makes sense. I mean, if she's not fully there mentally, how can anyone really say she gave consent? It kind of makes you wonder,
Yeah.
you know, where's the line when it comes to telling someone's story, especially when they might not be in a position to say yes or no for themselves. Yeah, it's a question a lot of people are asking. This isn't just about Wendy. It makes us rethink how we protect the rights and dignity of anyone, especially those facing a serious illness, one that could affect their ability to make decisions.
And to make things even more complicated, the article mentions Wendy's family is claiming they're being kept out of the loop. They say they haven't been given the right information about her condition and that they haven't been able to see her as much as they'd like.
Right, so this is where guardianship can get really complicated. We have to remember Wendy was placed under court-ordered guardianship back in April 2022. That was even before the dementia diagnosis. Back then, it was because of other health problems like Graves' disease and issues with alcohol. Now, her sister Wanda is saying the guardian, Morrissey, is the only one who has full access to Wendy.
Hold on, so even her own family can't just see her easily. That doesn't seem right. Do families have any options in situations like this? Or is the guardian's word final?
Well, in most states, families can actually ask the court to take another look at the guardianship. Or they can request changes if they believe the guardian isn't doing what's best for the person. But it's a legal process, and there are no guarantees.
So it's not just about Wendy's health. It's also about who gets to decide what happens to her and whether those decisions are truly in her best interest.
Exactly. And that leads to a question that keeps popping up. Who gets to speak for Wendy? Is it the guardian? The one with the legal power? Is it her family who obviously care deeply about her? Or is there some way to make sure her own voice is heard, even in her current condition?
It's a question that goes way beyond Wendy's specific situation. It makes you think about how we treat people who might not be able to make decisions for themselves. Do we just assume they don't have a voice anymore? Or is there a way to ensure their wishes are still respected?
And that's just one layer of this story. We've got legal battles, family dynamics, and of course the heartbreaking reality of Wendy's condition. There's a lot more to unpack here, and I think you'll find some of the details coming up especially insightful.
Well, you've definitely got me hooked. This is shaping up to be one of the most thought-provoking deep dives we've done. What else did you find out?
Let's go back to Wendy's sister Wanda for a minute. Her concerns about being shut out really get to the heart of this whole guardianship thing. She's claiming they haven't even gotten clear information about Wendy's condition, let alone any say in what her treatment plan should be.
It's one thing for a court to say, okay, we need a guardian.
Hmm.
But to then restrict family access just seems kind of extreme. Is that a normal thing that happens?
It does happen.
Yeah.
And it often causes a lot of conflict in these guardianship cases. Legally, the guardian has to do what they think is best for the person. And sometimes that actually means limiting contact, especially if they think it could be harmful or disruptive to their care. But of course, families don't always see it that way.
Yeah, I get that. You'd think family would be the best support system, especially in a tough situation like this. Can they fight back against the guardian's decisions?
They can definitely try. But it means going to court, which can get messy. Wanda would have to convince the court that the guardian isn't acting in Wendy's best interest. And that's a pretty high bar to clear.
So there's this tension between, protecting someone who might be vulnerable and also respecting the role of their family. It's a hard balance to strike.
It really is. And it brings up a bigger question for society. How do we make sure that guardianship, which is meant to protect, doesn't end up isolating people from their loved ones?
Right, because you don't want someone to be under guardianship and then basically be cut off from everyone who cares about them. It's like they're being protected but also trapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why these cases are so complex. You've got the legal side of things, the medical evaluations, and then the very real emotions of families who want to be there for their loved one.
Speaking of Wendy's care, you mentioned that she was placed under guardianship in 2022. It was because of different health issues at the time. I know she's been pretty open over the years about her struggles with Graves' disease and lymphedema.
Yeah, Wendy has always been incredibly open with her audience. Even when she had her talk show, she would talk about her health challenges, including her struggles with substance abuse. It was part of what made her so relatable.
Oh, totally. She wasn't afraid to be vulnerable and share her struggles with everyone. It's what made so many viewers love her. That's also why this whole situation feels so sad. She went from being this vibrant personality, talking about her life on her own terms, to now where she's mostly out of the spotlight and fighting this really tough illness.
It really does make you think about how important it is to respect people's privacy and dignity, especially when they're facing health problems that might make it hard for them to control their own story.
It's hard not to feel for Wendy. This whole thing raises a lot of questions about how we treat and talk about people with dementia. It reminds you that behind all the headlines and legal drama, there's a real person dealing with a really difficult reality.
You're absolutely right, and it's something millions of people face every day. It's just that Wendy's case is happening in public. It forces us to face some tough questions, like how we support those living with dementia, how we balance their need for protection with their right to make their own choices, and how we make sure they're treated with dignity and respect throughout their illness.
And this People.com article mentions that Wendy was seen in public with her son back in August. It was the first time in over a year. It must have been a big deal for her fans to see her out and about.
It was a small glimpse into her life away from the cameras. And while it didn't give us any specific updates on how she's doing, it did offer a little bit of hope for those who are worried about her.
I can understand why people would hold on to any good news they can get. Everyone wants to believe she's getting the care she needs and that her loved ones are able to be there for her.
Unfortunately, the reality of the situation is much more complicated. The legal stuff is still going on, the family is still worried about seeing her, and the fact that her illness could get worse is a constant concern.
So it's like this mix of hope and uncertainty. We see her out in public, which suggests some level of normalcy. But then we're reminded of the serious nature of her diagnosis and the ongoing conflicts about her care. It's like we're seeing these two different versions of Wendy's story. There's what we see publicly with the court cases and those little glimpses of her out and about. But then there's the more private side, the reality of what she's going through with dementia.
And that private story is one that so many families experience. Wendy's fame just shines a light on an issue that a lot of people deal with quietly.
It's a good reminder that even though we're talking about Wendy Williams specifically, this is about something much bigger. It's about how we as a society approach things like aging and illness and those really difficult decisions that sometimes have to be made for people who can't make them for themselves.
This whole discussion about guardianship really shows the struggle between wanting to protect someone and also respecting their independence. How do we find that balance, especially when someone's mental abilities are declining?
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the legal stuff and the family drama. But at the end of the day, this is a story about a person facing a really tough challenge. It makes you think about what kind of support is out there for people like Wendy, both from those close to them and from society as a whole.
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, not just about celebrities, but in our own lives. Are we doing enough to support those with dementia and their families? Are we having honest conversations about end-of-life care and making those tough choices?
I think Wendy's story, as personal as it is, can also spark those bigger conversations. It makes us face some uncomfortable truths about getting older, dealing with illness, and accepting things we can't control.
If there's one thing I hope you take away from this deep dive, it's to have more empathy and understanding for those going through the challenges of dementia. Whether it's a public figure like Wendy Williams or someone you know personally, these are experiences that deserve our compassion and attention.
I totally agree. This isn't a topic that's going away, and it affects us all in some way. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been heavy at times, but I think it's been a really important look at some big issues.
And remember, even though this particular deep dive is ending, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep supporting those who need it.